I'm going to take you through the process of collecting wild yeast to make a sourdough starter that you can use in breads and biscuits, cornbread, whatever. This is a long process. It takes 5 to 7 days probably, and it's a much slower rising yeast to use than what you would get from your commercially purchased yeast. Why would you want to do this? It is because it is slower rising, it's said to be much healthier for you, and if you can't get commercially purchased yeast, then you can collect your own to make it. So today I'm going to start. All I do the first day is just I'm pouring milk in a bowl, and I'm going to let this sit here on the counter until tomorrow, and then tomorrow we'll take it up. Okay, here we are on the second day. I let the milk set out all night right here on the countertop at room temperature. It's beginning to sour a little bit. So now what I'm going to do is just add in, stir in equal amounts of the flour. Just going to stir that, blend it in. Now I'm going to put the milk and flour in this container because I want more surface space so it can draw in the wild yeast when I put it outside. So that it doesn't get insects in, I'm going to cover it tightly with some cheesecloth. Now I want to tie that on so it can't come off. I have a table on the porch that I'm going to place this on, and it doesn't have a cover over it. Now if you have a porch with a roof over it, that would be fine, but you don't want it enclosed because it can't pull the wild yeast in if you don't have the airflow around it. And you also don't want the sun baking it, so I'm putting a big umbrella over it so it shades it, but it will get the airflow, and then when we bring it in, it'll be out there for about 8 hours, 6 to 8 hours, and when I bring it in, then we'll go the next step. Okay, I've brought the sour mixture in from outside on the porch, and I wanted to show you that you can see the yeast that is collected on top, and what I'm going to do is just let it sit here on the countertop for 3 to 5 days, and then when it starts bubbling and fermenting, then I will take some of this and make some bread out of it. This is our 7th day from starting the sourdough, the wild yeast dough, and here's what we have. It's starting to bubble. Now it takes different amount of days. It depends on the temperature in your house or the humidity also. Now here's what we have. You can kind of see the bubbles there, how it's bubbling up. And it did dry out one day, and I added a little more water. but when you stir it up, it's thick and smooth like a sour cream. So I want to stir it up, and I'm going to measure out enough to make some sourdough bread today. Okay. I'm going to use 2 cups in this bread, so I'm just going to measure it out and set it aside. And you can really smell the sour smell to it. But after you bake the bread, it's gone. Now, after you take out what you need, you always want to keep some as a backup to make your next recipe. And so what I'm going to do is, when you take it out, you add in equal amounts of flour and water. And you stir that in until it's smooth. And the yeast that's left in there will continue to make more yeast as you let it set. And after you add the yeast, just let it sit out on your countertop for, I'll let this set out until tomorrow morning. And if I don't use it, I'll put it in the refrigerator. But I'm planning to use some more in the morning, so that yeast starter that's already in there will continue to make more yeast starter. And if you keep this going all the time, you'll always have the starter, but what you need to do is you need to take some of it out each day. And if you don't use it, just throw it out and replenish it with fresh water and flour. So I'm going to let this sit here on the countertop until tomorrow morning. And then in the morning, if I decide not to use it, I'll put it in the refrigerator. Okay, now I'm going to make some bread, sourdough bread with it. So I'm going to start off with about 3 cups of flour. Okay, and then I have some salt and some sugar, which helps the yeast to work. And also, because it's sour, it's like sour cream or buttermilk or anything else, you need some baking soda to work with the sour cream or whatever you use. In this case, it's the sourdough starter. So I'm going to add, I'm going to put in the sourdough starter, and then I'll need to put in some warm water with it. Okay, let me step over here and get the warm water. Okay, I got my warm water here, but I'm going to put in a little bit of melted butter, which helps add with the texture and also the flavor. And then I'm going to stir in some warm water. The warm water in, I'm going to add flour until I get a dough, soft dough. A bigger scoop here. got a soft dough, I'm going to put some flour out here on the surface and so I can knead it. I want to scrape all the flour that's left in the bowl out on it too. Okay. Get some flour out there so I have it handy to pull into it. Now you want to knead this until it's smooth and elastic, and you'll feel that snap to it after you knead it. You just want to add more flour in as you knead. It gets real springy, just as it would if you use the commercially quick rise yeast. If you feel it getting sticky, that's when you pull in a little more flour. You don't want to get too much flour because it'll make it dry. Again, I feel it getting sticky, so you want to pull it in. I would say you want to knead this about 15 minutes, depending on how fast you can knead. It may take you 20 or 25, but you want it real smooth and not sticky. We're just about to that point. Okay, now what I'm going to do, I have a greased bowl here, and I'm going to put the dough in the greased bowl, and we want to turn it over so that it's all covered with the grease. The Crisco is what I use, solid shortening. And I'm going to cover it with some plastic wrap, and I'll cover it with a towel also. Now this time, unlike when I was doing the starter, I'm going to set this over by the stove where it's warmer. The oven's on, and it's quite warm over there. And I'm going to let this rise. And unlike the quick rise yeast that you buy in the store, it will take this longer to rise. But they say it's better for you. And in case you can't get yeast, this is a good bread to do, and it is good to eat. So I'm going to put it over by the stove and let it rise for maybe 2 hours. It may take 2 hours, it may take 3. But whenever it gets to a point, then we'll be back and show it to you. I have the wild yeast starter dough that I'm making the bread out of. It's been rising for about 2 hours and 40 minutes. And I think it's ready to shape into a loaf. But first, I'm going to grease a pan a little bit with some solid shortening. And then I'm going to sprinkle some cornmeal over it, some yellow cornmeal. Okay. Now I'm going to punch the bread down. I want a little bit of flour on here, not much, but just enough so it doesn't stick. And then I'm going to take the cover off and the plastic wrap off the top, and you can see that it has risen some, and so I'm going to turn it out on this flour. See, it's nice and light. And you can smell the sour effect to it. And so I'm going to get a little more flour. It feels a little sticky. And we want to just punch it down. We're not going to knead it a lot, but we do want to punch it down. Get all the air out of it. Don't want to add a lot of flour to it. Just keep it from sticking. And get all the, flatten it out and get all the air out of it. When it rises, you have a lot of bubbles in it. That's the gas that comes from the yeast rising in it. So I'm just going to shape it like this in a round loaf. Now you know as it rises, it will expand. So I want to put it on the tray. And then I'm going to place it over by the stove again so it can rise. And then when we're ready to put it in the oven, I will show it to you before I put it in the oven. Okay, I'm getting ready to put the wild yeast bread in the oven, and I'm going to brush it lightly with water. You can also put this in a bread pan, a loaf pan if you want to, which I've done that before. going to cut across the top and just put some a couple slits across the top, and then I want to turn it this way and go the other way. Then I'm going to put this in the oven and bake it, and then I'll show it to you when it comes out. Okay, I just took the bread out of the oven, and I'm going to put it over on the cutting board. Now, like I said earlier, if you want a deeper loaf of bread, you could put it in a large bread loaf pan.